City manager to begin preparations for design work, and then review and modify the CCAC's charter with a resolution to come back before the City Council at the next meeting for those changes. That concludes my portion of the report. The big show, and I may have gone too quickly, is Cheryl from HMC, who is here this evening to give that presentation. I can stall if you I don't have much more to say.
You can play the horn. Gary did.
Be careful.
Do you have the cover of the projector?
No, it's not. It's got the light up there.
No, I think that.
This isn't St. Patrick's Day, is it?
No.
Check.
Oh yeah, no, I got it.
Okay, here we are. So, tonight we're going to present the culmination of the work we've been doing, as George just described. And here's a rough outline of what I'll talk through. Just remind you a bit of the process. I think the last time we spoke with you was the November study session. So we'll just kind of review what we did in terms of completion of our process. Then we'll show you the master plan, go through the budgeting, and finish with the next steps. So in the study session that you had in November, we were at the point in our process that I would call the synthesis point, where we had gone through meeting with the community on a series of options we had developed, and we were ready to finalize a single solution. You might recall our process has been very engaged with the community, so I just wanted to highlight these are all the public meetings that were held in different ways, shape, or form. We had very good attendance at the workshops and the neighborhood meetings that were held, and we received a lot of great input from the community and all the different neighborhoods throughout our process. And here are just some highlights. These are the two public workshops that we held, some imagery from those. All of our large sessions like this, as well as the outreach meetings, had been graphically recorded, so the city will have that record. And they were kind of graphically depicted what the conversation was at each of those meetings. The outreach meetings that were held, generously offered by residents who opened up their homes. Each of these meetings were more intimate. We might have had anywhere from a dozen to maybe as many as 20 or so people. At these meetings, we showed residents a series of 3 options that we had developed to test preferences, priorities, really start to zero in on what felt right for the site. And this is what we reviewed in more detail with you in November at our study session with you, which brought us to the guidance that we sought to really focus in now and develop a final solution. So since then, that's what we focused on, is bringing the master plan together into the final solution that you see here. Some of the big ideas and the most important factors in this solution involved creating that town green space that you see in the center, and really creating that pedestrian feel and gathering at the center of the site. It was also important to the public that the library remained its own building, and that the other city functions were grouped into a single administration building. It was also critical to maintain a certain circulation through and around the site, which Matthew will talk about in a little more detail as we walk through it just layer by layer so that you can understand how the plan has come together. So the first thing I'll touch on are the buildings themselves. In the final solution, we've actually allowed the existing public works sheds and storage facilities to remain, which you see in the upper right-hand corner there with Corporation Yard labeled on them. Obviously, the train station remains, the existing train station. And one of the things that came out of our process, which was also important, is there was real mixed feeling from the residents on what to do with this building that we're in, the town hall building. There seemed to be a pretty strong consensus that it was important to Atherton. It's a historic figure, in terms of a structure that's been here a long time that people recognize. So there was a fondness for it. There was maybe 50-50 split on people wanting to preserve it or reuse it in some way. or say some semblance of it, but there was no real identifiable program function that this building was specifically suited for. So we made sure to allow the master plan to accommodate leaving this building in place, but you'll see when we talk about the budget, how we've elected to kind of hold this building aside from the main functions and the new buildings that are described in the master plan. So what you see here are the two new buildings, which will be the library, and then what we're calling the city administration building, which will house the police department, the city administration, public works, and then building and planning. It will also include the post office and retain that function. The library will be, it's a bit larger, but it will continue to be a one-story structure, whereas the city administration building, to house all of the space needed, will be a two-story structure, is what we're showing here in terms of the footprint.